I have been chomping at the bit to do this story since Sunday because my kids started to get sick on Sunday, and so we bumped our Sunday show up from the evening to the afternoon, thinking in case his fever spiked overnight, I would just be kind of available. But then as soon as we signed off on our Sunday show, so this would have been almost a week ago, it was announced that the Cornel West campaign hired Peter Daou as its campaign manager. Cornel tweets out, "I'm so very blessed to have my dear brother Peter Daou as my campaign manager. I welcome him to our campaign and movement. We will work together for truth and justice." Here's the announcement they put out. We don't have to read the whole thing here. Presidential candidate Cornel West today welcomed Peter Daou to his presidential campaign in the role of campaign manager. A respected activist, advisor, writer, and musician, Daou has more than 20 years of national political experience and was described by the New York Times as one of the most prominent political bloggers in the nation. He has advised major progressive organizations and has held senior positions in several Democratic presidential campaigns. Daou has been an independent since 2020 and supported the Green Party in the 2020 election.
Howie
Hawkins, yes. Before entering the political arena, Daou was a prolific keyboardist and remixer, appearing on recordings by artists including Miles Davis, Diana Ross, Janet Jackson, and Mariah Carey. He says it's an honor to be a part of Dr. West's historic campaign for president. Dr. West is a man of deep personal integrity, great accomplishment, and far-reaching vision. Okay, so as we all know, and look, we all know who Peter Daou is. I could have, brought up a million tweets of his through the 2016 cycle and after. One of the most militant, vicious Hillary Clinton, David Brock junkyard dogs. Just a profound, bone-deep hatred of the Bernie campaign and the Bernie movement and the Green Party as well at the time. Here's just this kind of sums it up. 26 years in Congress for Bernie is establishment. Doesn't mean he's bad. But first woman POTUS is not establishment. So there he is making the argument. Hillary Clinton was the anti-establishment choice in 2016 because she's a woman. Right.
Nice. Love
exactly.
It. Right in.
Yeah. Tonally, that's one of the more benign bangers that he fired off in that cycle. But that kind of reflects just, how shallow a guy he was at the time. Now, sorry, I don't mean to jump the gun here. So anyway, we all know, I don't have to bring up all the screenshots of the different tweets. Obviously, CJ said, that's it, I'm done with the Cornel campaign. He got a lot of pushback for this move. And so Jill Stein thought it necessary to make known that it was she who recruited Peter Daou into the campaign because she was serving as Cornel's interim campaign manager when he was first getting started. And then she took it upon herself to hire the more official long-term staff. So she says, newsflash, it was me that brought Peter Daou to Cornel West. Why? Because I learned how essential an experienced campaign manager is for my campaigns without one. He's the most experienced campaign manager I know of with independent green politics and strong opposition to duopoly. Now, here's where it gets even. This is the worst one, and we'll come back to this in a moment. Though I didn't know of Peter Daou in his days as DNC defender, it's not hard to see how a war-torn, bloody childhood led to fierce opposition to Bush and bondage to the Dem Party. If only more liberal apologists would have this kind of wake-up. With an experienced campaign manager, our team can give Cornel West the support he needs to break the duopoly and give all those thrown under the bus reason to fight back. So you're telling me that you didn't know of him in his days as a DNC defender?
She's lying. In my opinion, she's lying.
That has to be a lie. Just has to be a lie. And at worst, that is just insane negligence and incompetence. So what are you saying? You don't vet the campaign manager? Is that basically what you're saying?
Well, people are trying to justify it by saying that she didn't know him then, and she knows him now, so maybe she's vetted him now, but she's saying she wasn't aware of him at that time. I think she's lying. You have to be lying. He led the smear campaign against you. He was, as you just said, one of the most vicious attack dolls. Dude worked hand in hand with David Brock for years. He is the guy that came up with Bernie Bros and Bernie's a Russian agent, and Bernie's a sexist, and all of his supporters are sexist, and all of those smears that happened in the 2015, 2016 campaign, all the smears against Jill Stein about how she's responsible for Donald Trump, all of that stuff. That was Peter Daou. That was Peter Daou. That's who he was. You're telling me you didn't know who he was? I have a very difficult time believing that.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to think that she didn't know.
Everybody
and if she
knew.
didn't know of him then she's obviously not aware of just how divisive a choice this is now.
Yes.
Like, it kind of goes hand in hand. Like, you want to say, okay, you vetted him now in retrospect. Well, if you really looked into it, you'd have known that this guy is just too toxic to put in charge of the campaign. Whether you think his transformation is legitimate or not, I'm all about redemption and second chances. That's almost besides the point. Yeah. The point is, that even getting this guy involved with the campaign is going to drive a wedge right through whatever coalition Cornel West is trying to build. Yes. To put him in charge of the campaign.
He spent years. The Cornel West base would be Bernie's supporters, right? That's like the people. That's the base of. And this guy spent years trashing those people. I mean, to the highest degrees. An entire smear campaign that lasted for years, 4 years. Not just the 2015, 2016 campaign. He continued to trash people for years following that. And this is the guy that you chose to put in charge of Cornel West campaign. You have just divided your base in half, and you have created such a major distraction. Look, since this has been announced, nobody's talking about Cornel West policies. They're talking about Peter Daou. And that is such a monumental political miscalculation. It's ridiculous. The idea that anybody thought that this was, we need an experienced campaign. First of all, he's never won a campaign.
No, he's a loser.
On lots of them.
John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, Marianne Williamson.
Progressives, the little he's never won, not one single time. You need an experienced campaign manager who's never won and has an incredibly divisive history. Tell me how that makes sense. It doesn't.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely absurd. Also, he started this cycle as campaign manager for Marianne Williamson, which is a Democratic campaign.
After swearing off Democrats.
Right. After swearing off Democrats, a Democrat campaign, a pro-NATO campaign, a pro-World War III campaign. Her position on the Russia-Ukraine war is pretty much identical to Joe Biden's. And so if this guy's convictions are so deeply held, why did he take a job with the Marianne Williamson campaign at the start of this cycle? If one of the main pillars of Cornel's campaign is disband NATO, then why are you recruiting this guy who was just, as of a few weeks ago, on the Marianne campaign? Makes no sense. So then Cornel apparently wants to vouch for her. So he says, serious revolutionaries keep the focus on suffering and struggling of everyday people who fight against empire capitalism, white supremacy, male supremacy, homophobia, transphobia. Superficial ones cater to their individual careers, market opportunities, and personal polemics that bring attention only to themselves.
That second part, he just described Peter Daou's entire career. That second part.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was Peter Daou.
I think he was directing that at Jimmy Dore, it seems like, right?
100%.
I mean, that seems like a pretty targeted swipe there. Yeah. But yes, you're right. That does describe Daou in a nutshell. Number one. Number two, serious revolutionaries keep the focus. Serious revolutionaries are very protective of their movement. They don't allow shady characters in. This would be like Che Guevara going to Fidel Castro being like, hey, I found this new general. Didn't his father used to own one of those tobacco plantations? Yeah, but that was a few years ago. He seems cool now, right? Like, I think he's good. I checked him out, right? So like this just, I mean, it's just insane. Serious revolutionary, a serious presidential campaign vets their campaign manager. They vet the campaign manager. And you could say, oh, you did some research on him. You didn't know him back then, and now you know. You clearly do not understand the seriousness of just how divisive a pick like this is. To put him in charge of the campaign is just nonsense. And it's really another heartbreaker because, look, Cornel West, there was a poll that came out just now in Iowa, has him pulling at 5 points in Iowa. And that's great. And look, I wish the campaign well. But I'm not at a point now where I can advise people to get invested in this. How can I vouch for a campaign that is so reckless at worst and reckless at best and dishonest at worst about who it chooses to lead the campaign? Yeah. At best, this was unbelievably lazy, negligent, and irresponsible. At worst, Jill Stein is fucking lying. It is almost impossible for me to believe, as you said, that she did not know who this guy was.
Everybody knew who he was.
Everybody knew who he was.
Everybody knew who he was. Everybody. If you were a Bernie supporter, if you were a Jill Stein supporter, you knew who Peter Daou was. He made himself incredibly known. He was, again, this guy, this is not like somebody, and this makes me angry. Somebody tried to compare him to Ryan Knight. Oh, you don't take Ryan Knight seriously then? Those are two completely different people. Ryan Knight was just some guy who happened to buy into the Democratic Party establishment's bullcrap. Peter Daou this dude comes from the darkest depths of the establishment. I mean, this is somebody who lives underneath the swamp, or did. If you believe listen, I genuinely hope that he made a transformation. I want to believe that he is a different person, that he has changed. He's seen the error of his ways.
To me, that's
he
besides
can
the
do
point.
so on the sidelines. Right. To put him in a leadership position in your campaign, first of all, that's as you said, it's grossly negligible. I mean, the idea that you are putting somebody who has that kind of risk associated with them, do y'all not know how infiltration works? Do I need to explain that to you? I mean, this is it blows my mind. Not even just that aspect of it, but again, he is incredibly divisive. You have just shot yourself in both feet before you've even started. It makes no sense whatsoever. None. And I absolutely do not believe that Jill Stein did not know who he was. She knew. There's no question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, it doesn't add up, not even close. And you can't, even if the campaign's not going to win, even if the goal is 5%, whatever the goal is, if I'm going to endorse a campaign and I'm going to encourage my audience to invest in a campaign, be it financially or volunteer their time, I have to feel like their time and money is in good hands with the campaign. And there's just no way that I can say that at this point, because it's not in good hands. It's not in good hands. No. They can't just be that haphazard about who they hire. And Cornel himself seems just totally checked out. Checked out. I mean, he seemed kind of checked out from the beginning. That's why he was persuaded to run with the People's Party. He said, okay, sure, I'll do it. Then Chris Hedges convinced him to switch to the Greens. Okay, sure, I'll do it. Now Jill Stein is in charge of hiring staff. He just seems to be doing interviews and saying his piece, which is, it's fine. That's his right. But I'm not convinced that he's involved in picking his staff or building his team. I'm not convinced. He just seems like, he sits in front of the John Coltrane quilt and gives interviews, and then everybody else just runs it around him. Even if the campaign's not built to win, it still has to be built strategically. It still has to have a mission. It has to have a purpose, and it has to have a sense of direction. And it breaks my heart to say it, obviously. Everybody here knows that. But it just doesn't seem to have any of those things going for it now. No. I still hope it succeeds. I hope all third parties succeed. I hope the no labels scumbags run somebody. I mean, I'll never consider supporting them, but I hope as many third parties as want to jump in, I hope they jump in. I hope the Libertarians nominate someone good. The Party for Socialism and Liberation just launched a campaign. I wish that campaign well. Like, it's fine. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying don't go vote third party. And if you want to vote for Cornel West, absolutely vote for Cornel West. I'll probably still end up voting for Cornel West just to fuck the Democrats, just to cause chaos, right? But beyond that, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't tell people to be invested in it, right? Just like, look, the people who want to go vote for RFK, right? In the Democratic primary, whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, if you can't get it up to jerk off that morning and you want to instead go vote for RFK in the Democratic primary, whatever, knock yourself out. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to discourage you from doing that.
No.
Then that's kind of what I feel about this campaign at this point. Like, I won't discourage people from voting for him if they want to, but I no longer feel like their time is in good hands with the campaign. And once I feel that way, I just can't, in good conscience, tell people that they should go out and get really invested.
No, the electoral system is broken. Everybody knows I don't care about electoral politics. That's why everybody's like, well, why do you care so much then? Because my hope for the Cornel West campaign was that he's not going to win. Come on, we live in a completely broken system. Our elections are garbage. He's not going to win, and likely isn't going to get anywhere near 5%. They won't allow it. However, my hope for the Cornel West campaign, and I've been saying this for ages since he announced his run, was that he would use it as an opportunity to build a movement, a legitimate movement, and he's very clearly not doing that. And Emily in the chat, homegirl, I have never once promoted Peter Daou being a changed man. You can go back and look at my Twitter feed. I've hated the guy since jump. I've never changed my opinion on Peter Daou, not a once. not one time. I've always been skeptical of him. I have never once promoted him as a change man. I don't think that he is. I hope that he is, because I think that that would be the right choice to make. He was an absolute scumbag. I have never once promoted him as a change man. But this is what is frustrating to me, is that he has and you're right. I think he was kind of prodded into running. I think the People's Party, Nick Brana in particular, tried desperately to get Jimmy Dore to run for president.
Yep.
Jimmy did not want to run for president. I think Cornel West was probably the second, maybe even third choice in the line that they were desperately. I think the People's Party just wanted somebody to run under their banner so that they could elevate themselves. And I think Cornel West bought into that. I don't think he really thought it was going to be a legitimate run. I think he thought he was just going to be helping the People's Party build their brand or whatever. And then exactly he got convinced to switch into the Green Party by his friend Chris Hedges. And now I feel like he's in something that he really never wanted to begin with. He never wanted it to be a legitimate run for president. He never really wanted to do any of this stuff in a serious way. And so now it feels as if this is very haphazardly put together. And he is legitimately checked out and always has been. So again, I'm not going to tell you, I don't vote. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Your vote, in my opinion, doesn't matter. Electoral politics is a waste of time, in my opinion. But if you want to go vote, go vote. I will never tell you not to. I just think that, as you just said, there's absolutely no way anybody should be donating to this campaign. Nobody should be investing any time or energy into this campaign, in my opinion. If you want to, go for it. It's your time to waste. But with somebody like Peter Daou at the helm, I would really think seriously about that.
Yeah, and so the other point that you made that's interesting about Ryan Knight, because you're right, people do say, well, Ryan Knight used to be this big lib, and the main difference between Ryan Knight and Peter Daou, and the reason this is relevant to this conversation, is that Ryan Knight is an independent podcaster. And he does what I do. He sits in his house with a microphone and he talks to people who will hear him talk. Peter Daou is different. Peter Daou is always sniffing around for a gig. I don't know if he's always sniffing around for a job. He always wants to be hired. He's always trying to ingratiate himself with some circle of influence. That's why he joined the Marianne Williamson campaign. Mm-hmm. He always wants a job. And when you're always looking for a job, you're always looking to win the approval of a certain circle of people. And at the beginning of this cycle, he was not volunteering his time for the Green Party. He needed a gig. And, I do believe he is disillusioned with the establishment Democratic Party. And that's probably why he went to the Marianne campaign. But the fact that Marianne is pro-NATO, pro-Ukraine war, pro-World War III, that was not a deal breaker for him. He said, all right, well, she's to the left of Joe Biden on these issues. That's good enough for me. Where do I sign? Where do I get the check? And so that's the big difference, is that this guy has proven, even post-transformation, even post-revelation, right, whatever sort of epiphany he had, he's always been chasing the next job. Yeah. Right? And, the fact that they knew that this guy was a keyboardist for Mariah Carey, but didn't hear of him in 2016 when he was attacking Jill Stein and the Greens, again, that just makes no sense. It makes no sense. There's just no way to really even say that she's being honest there. And you've talked about the Greens apparently a fair amount. But sorry.
No, I have. I mean, I've been. That's another thing that people keep. Why won't you to support the? I've never supported the Green Party. I've always had issues with them. I tried to get involved with them in 2012. I voted for Jill Stein in 2012 and 2016. They were very exclusive and exclusionary then. If you didn't want to join their club, they didn't want any part of you. And then in 2020, they very openly rigged their primary for Howie Hawkins, a Russia-gating, Julian Assange smearing, dead naming of Chelsea Manning, Howie Hawkins, an absolute scumbag. And so, and there's been a whole host of evidence to support the fact that there's a ton of corruption. Courtney's in the chat. I've interviewed her. She's experienced it. Matthew Ho had a whole host of issues with his run in North Carolina. The Green Party has been suspect for a very long time. So it's not even just about Cornel West and Peter Daou. The Green Party as a whole has a whole bunch of issues. And it's just weird that people don't want to address those.
Yeah, I mean, we know Courtney very well. She's a great friend of the show. She's taken issue with us over the past several weeks, saying that, where these Green Party stands. And I thought I made clear many times that I've never actually been one. I was suspicious of the Green Party in 2016, when after Trump won, Jill Stein pulled that stunt where she started raising money for those recounts in Michigan, Wisconsin, and PA. I thought, well, this is very suspicious because why is she asking for recounts in states where that Trump won narrowly and where she got a lot of votes? It almost seems like she's apologizing for having cost Hillary the campaign because she said it was some election integrity audit she was trying to do. That's nonsense because the Democrats won Nevada and New Hampshire that year by a smaller margin than Trump won Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. So if this was really about making sure the vote counts were accurate, then why wouldn't you call for a recount in the states that Clinton won narrowly? It definitely seemed like she was in damage control mode, trying to save face with the Democrats because she bought into the narrative that she blew their campaign. Yeah. And so that just struck me as a very suspicious move. Why are you doing this now? If you did cost Hillary the White House, you should wear that as a badge of honor as a third party. That gives you power. That's a flex. Yeah. Instead, she did the opposite. So I've been suspicious of the Greens from that moment on. I've never been a stan for them. I saw an opportunity in Cornel West to cause chaos within the electoral system because of his name ID and because of his high polling out of the gate, which he still has. And I still hope he gets a lot of votes. I hope any third party that runs does well. I wish them well. I don't wish them harm. But it's just not something I can invest in anymore. And it's not something I can tell people to invest in anymore.
No. And it's weird to me that people are, again, gaslighting us about it. Like, oh, I can't believe you're upset that Peter Daou has been, really? You can't believe we're upset about that? Like, it's just the gaslighting that's involved in this and that everybody should just accept it uncritically and that nobody should talk about the corruption in the Green Party and all of the other stuff that's going on. It's just weird. It's a very weird set of circumstances. Again, I had really genuinely hoped that Cornel West was going to use this opportunity to build a coalition, to build a movement, to reach out to people across the political spectrum, to try to bring people together. Of course, he's not going to win. It's highly unlikely he's going to get to 5%. And yet he's doing the opposite of what I was hoping that he was going to do. And it sucks. It's disheartening to see. I think it's once again going to devastate actual revolutionary movement. I mean, it seems as if, that's always what happens in these situations is people get their hopes up and then they're crushed. And here we are again.
Please clap.